All right, so our next speaker is Tarice Taylor. Tarice Taylor is a Navy veteran who also spent 7 years as a civilian in the Department of Defense, always hoping to one day use her marine science degree and her analytical skills to fulfill a greater purpose. She promised her grandfather before he passed away 14 years ago that she would make him proud someday, and she hopes that this project in some way honors him and the rest of the greatest generation. Just on a personal note, I was working with Tarice when she was first thinking about what to do as a capstone project, and she had lived in the Gulf of Mexico for some time and was thinking about doing a film related to fishermen in that area, and she was really excited about it. And then she saw a presentation related to this topic and came into my office and said, "Samantha, I am so sorry. You were gonna be my capstone chair. We had all these plans. I need to do this project." So I know it really, really called to her, and it was just really moving to see how inspired she became by this project. So I'm really excited that you did follow your calling on this project and decided to pursue it. So please join me in welcoming Tarice Taylor.
Okay. Good morning, faculty, alumni, students, and guests. My name is Tarice Taylor, and I will be giving my presentation on the environmental analysis of submerged cultural resource survey areas of the Kiska Island National Historic Landmark Maritime Battlefield. And as you can see right there is Kiska circled in red. It is in the Aleutian chain of Alaska, but it is very far to the west. So some goals of this project were to really use ArcGIS to create one composite geodatabase of some of the features in the area, and to use geoprocessing and COCOA analysis to further analyze those habitats in the environments, and to implement that geodatabase and analysis to the Project Recover team, which their goal is to fuse historical data with the latest technology to research and locate submerged World War II wreckage and the associated servicemen that have been missing in action. This is an outline of my presentation. So a little bit about the background of the Kiska battlefield, right here, the Kiska battlefield. So on June 6th, 1942, Kiska was invaded by the Japanese imperial forces in an attempt for them to expand their empire eastward. And they immediately started to set up camps around Kiska Harbor, and that's where their main camp was. So in response, naturally, the United States, being a US territory, started conducting bombing raids, mostly over Kiska Harbor, since that's where the majority of the camps and the coastal defense sites were. This ensued for about the next year and several months in an attempt to ultimately destroy their assets and drive them out. But unbeknownst to the Americans and Canadians, the Japanese escaped like ghosts in the night, undetected. 5,000 troops in less than an hour left Kiska, and the United States had no idea. So they kind of continued bombing the area, but about a month later, in August of 1943, the Aleutian campaign eventually ended, and what is left today are most of the Japanese coastal defense sites, remnants of anti-aircraft guns and seaplane parts, things like that. They completely abandoned the area and got out. So what also remains are some Japanese midget subs and also the Borneo Maru that is in Gertrude Cove. It is now just submerged above the surface, or above the surface there. What is not easily visible, though, are the submerged aircraft and submerged wreckage of submarines and warships, and also the missing in action servicemen attached to those military assets. But in July of this year, so in about a month, the Project Recover team will go to Kiska and conduct remote sensing surveys in the area, in 4 main areas of Kiska, under a grant from NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research. And because of the remoteness of this area, no detailed survey has ever been conducted, so the Project Recover team is actually entering a very data-poor region. And this project directly supports a large and complex undersea survey in which unmanned underwater vehicles and side scan and multi-beam sonars and divers will be a part of. So it's important to understand the environment, especially since there isn't a lot of pre-existing data here. There was a 1989 side scan sonar survey in the area, but the resolution was very coarse, so it was hard to detect the subterranean features, and poor navigation didn't really allow for anyone back into the area. But technology has vastly improved, so the Project Recover team will go there and conduct another survey in an attempt to find some submerged wreckage. So getting into the environmental part of this, the entire island of Kiska is surrounded by a marine protected area. So it's important to understand the environmental elements to this area. So there are a lot of marine mammals that are protected by either the Endangered Species Act or the Marine Mammal Protection Act, sorry. Also, kelp is very important to consider here because it can really impede with the operations of divers and also the survey equipment. These are the types of kelp that were surveyed at Kiska Island, mostly on the east side of Kiska. The dragon kelp, which is the top left, is the one of most concern because it grows about 80 feet through the water column. Also, it's important to consider tidal predictions and also currents in this area. The two areas that I was able to get tidal predictions for were Kiska Harbor and Gertrude Cove. Just gives a general idea for the month of July, which is when the team will be up there. So it's important to consider tidal fluctuations. There's Gertrude Cove. And then current predictions in Sea Lion Pass. It's actually a little east of Kiska, but it's the only station that had tidal data that was closest to Kiska. So doing some further analysis, the Geodatabase was created in the ArcGIS suite. So I was able to either digitize feature classes myself or pull them from sources in the shapefile and zip file format, unzip them, and then just add them into ArcMap. There are 21 total. This does not include the 7 that I created via geoprocessing tools, which I'll talk about next. So geoprocessing tools mainly process geographic and related data and are used to perform spatial analysis and manage GIS. And the geoprocessing tool that I found most conducive to this project was the INTERSECT tool. So what you do with the INTERSECT feature, or the INTERSECT tool, is you take an INTERSECT feature, the survey areas. I want to see what's in the survey areas, not all around Kiska Island. So I took those 7 feature classes that I deemed most important to the environment, intersected them with the survey areas, ran the geoprocessing tool, and that half circle is what I got out of it, those 7 feature classes. And to put it more in context, here's the shoreline habitats all around Kiska Island, but I just want to see what shoreline habitats reside in the survey areas. So you run the INTERSECT tool, and that is what you get on the right. So for Kiska, 2 of the 4 survey areas had habitats residing inside of them. The other 2 survey areas, equally as important, but they are in open water, so most of the habitats that I put on ArcMap were against land or within the shoreline areas. So for Gertrude Cove, there are anadromous fish species, anadromous waterways, as well as some streams. Kiska Harbor, in addition, nesting birds, stellar sea lion haul-out areas, and sea otters. And it's important to note that the month of July is the pupping season for the stellar sea lion and also the spawning season for the Dolly Varden and pink salmon. Just a graph showing a little bit further analysis of habitats present in the survey areas, a breakdown of the species in those habitats. And if you didn't know what some of those were, there they are in picture form. Shoreline habitats were also looked at via the geoprocessing tool INTERSECT, And the assessment of the environmental sensitivity is important to understanding the dynamics of that coastal environment. Kiska Harbor. So looking at contaminated sites here is kind of important to consider. I found these via the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation website. They are from 2017. They're active sites. The one at elevation on mainland Kiska is mostly petroleum and oil lubricants. There are oil drums beneath the surface still leaking out oil from 75 years ago. And the concern here is that with precipitation around Kiska, it runs downstream into Trout Lagoon, and with tidal fluctuation could enter Kiska Harbor. The contaminated site in the middle of Kiska Harbor is mostly composed of munitions and explosives of concern. There are unexploded ordnances here from World War II. As you can see around Kiska Harbor, all of the military installations that the Japanese built, as well as the wrecks that are the stars. Those are the submerged wrecks. And here are some of the contaminants still, and ammo, shells. COCOA analysis. This is the second kind of analysis that I used here. So the National Park Service specifies this, and it's mainly used for the terrestrial battlefield, and it's used by archaeologists to show the geographical realities of combat. It stands for key terrain, observation, and fields of fire, cover and concealment, obstacles, and avenues of approach. So for instance, I'll just go through these briefly. The key terrain here is a portion of the battlefield giving the advantage to the possessor. So for Kiska Island, it is the entire island. The Japanese used the entire island to set up most of their military installations, but Kiska Harbor having the majority of them. Observation in fields of fire. Elevated terrain gave the advantage to the Japanese. They set up their coastal defense sites here to detect incoming US bombers. Cover and concealment, landscapes that hide or provide protection from fire. North Head shielded the approach for the vessels into the harbor for the Japanese, and elevated terrain. The volcano concealed the west approach for the Americans. Obstacles, pretty self-explanatory. The sooty terrain of Kiska made it very hard for the Japanese to drive vehicles and even to travel on foot. I included the weather here too because the weather was a main factor in the Battle of Kiska. 2 to 4 days a month on average were only conducive to flying for the United States to conduct bombing raids. Avenues of approach. For the US, 2 main avenues of approach to conduct bombing raids over Kiska Harbor from the east and from the west. So in conclusion for COCOA, it's safe, I put this up here again because the majority of the wrecks here around Kiska are within the Kiska Harbor Survey area, which also is why the contaminated site is here. The bombing raids over Kiska Harbor sank Japanese subs, Japanese ships, Japanese seaplanes, but also the artillery fire from the Japanese shot down American planes. Crossfire, most of the ammo is now at the bottom of Kiska Harbor. So in conclusion, the Geodatabase that was created serves as an inventory of baseline historical and environmental data, which enhances the analysis done in this project as well. And it will provide the project recover team with information regarding areas of concern, possibly will enhance decision-making and recommendations as well. Because this was such a data poor region that, all this environmental data, it's really cool to kind of see what's going on here. And the implementation of this geodatabase will promote increased awareness of maritime cultural heritage through GIS technology and capabilities. Since the technology has advanced itself from 1989, it's going to be really cool now to see just how well these surveys can be conducted and the success of the survey. So with all of this information that Project Recover will help ensure the success of this survey. And to ultimately contribute to Project Recover's overall goal, which was also kind of my overall goal, was to help Project Recover with theirs. And that's to, use this technology, use all this information to, honor and document and honor the final resting place of these missing in action service members. So, and it will ensure that, the history will never be forgotten. So, thank you. And any questions? I can take those.
Hey, Tarice. I loved your presentation. Can you please tell me, is one of the ultimate goals to actually recover munitions and toxic things from the sea?
No, that is not the overall goal of Project Recover. It's to use the technology to conduct the remote sensing surveys in these areas, to, research these submerged wreck sites and ultimately find the service members that are associated with those wrecks.
Do you see yourself having any continued role with Project Recover? Do you think there's a space for that? And what do you see as their next steps and how your information will be used?
I'm just really excited, honestly, to be a part of this process. I feel really honored to have been able to do this. And I thank my Capstone committee, Drew, Eric, Heidi, and Mark, for being able to contribute something like this. It's a really remote area. It's uninhabited. No one really knows a lot about it. So I feel very privileged to have been able to contribute something to this survey. So, I'm excited to find out what happens up there here in the next couple of months. So, yeah.
That was a great presentation, Tarice. Thank you for that. Have you been to Kiska? You said it was very remote, but are you interested in going at all, or
I'm not
to
going.
other projects?
No, I'm not going. That's Project Recover, they're going.
Does Project Recover own the Geodatabase now, or do you, or will you make it publicly available?
I am giving it to the Project Recover team. There is some sensitive information in that Geodatabase that only the Project Recover team can have. It will not be publicly available other than to them.